If you think serving your country guarantees support from the VA, think again. For years, I believed the system would be there when I needed it most. That after everything I gave, after everything we all gave, someone would have our back. But the truth is, that safety net a lot of veterans count on, it's full of holes. And most of us don't realize it until it's too late. The real shock doesn't come when you get injured. It doesn't come during the paperwork, or even while you're waiting months for a response. The real shock comes when you open the envelope and see one word, denied. That's when everything changes. Suddenly, you're not just a veteran, you're a case number. You're facing a maze of hidden rules, silent policies, and unexplained decisions that no one prepared you for. And the worst part? Most of the people going through this have no idea what's really happening behind the scenes. But there's a reason you're here right now. Because deep down, you know something isn't right. Maybe you or someone you love was denied benefits and left wondering what went wrong. Maybe you've been told to just accept it. Or maybe you're tired of feeling like no one is telling the full story. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 VA secrets. Things most veterans only find out after they've been denied. Things that can quietly wreck your claim, delay your case, or cost you money and years you can't afford to lose. These aren't rumors. These are real patterns, buried facts, and hard lessons learned by the people who've been through it the hard way. Stay with me to the end, because some of these might completely change how you approach your case or how you protect someone you care about from making a mistake they can't undo. Let's get into it. Most people see that first denial letter from the VA and assume it's over, like a door just slammed shut and there's no way back in. But what they don't realize, what almost no one tells you, is that the first denial isn't the end. It's the beginning, and not just in theory. The VA expects you to push back. In fact, some insiders say it's almost built into the process. That first no is often less about your case being weak and more about testing whether you'll fight. And a lot of people don't. They take that rejection personally. They feel embarrassed, defeated, maybe even ashamed. So they walk away, and the system quietly counts on that. But here's the truth. Many of the most successful claims, the ones that finally get approved and lead to full benefits, started with a rejection. Because the veterans who win aren't always the ones with the perfect paperwork. They're the ones who don't give up after the first no. The VA system is bureaucratic. It's slow. It's frustrating by design. And sometimes that first denial is just a filter to weed out the ones who won't stick with it. Not because they don't deserve help, but because they don't know they're supposed to appeal. And that's where it becomes dangerous, because the system doesn't explain that to you. There's no bold warning that says, "Don't panic, you're still in this." There's just silence. And if you don't have someone guiding you, someone who's been through it or knows the process, you start to think it's your fault. But it's not. It's the system doing what it always does, making things harder than they need to be. So if you've been denied or you know someone who has, don't stop there. That letter isn't a final judgment. It's a wall that was always meant to be climbed. And the people who reach the top, they're the ones who understand this one simple truth. Denial doesn't mean unworthy. It just means the fight is starting. Here's something most veterans never realize until it's too late. Your own medical records, the files you think are helping you, might actually be the reason you got denied. It sounds strange, right? You served. You got hurt. You went to the doctor. It's all there in black and white, so what's the problem? The problem is that the VA doesn't just look at whether you were injured. They look at how it's documented. And if even one piece is missing, vague, or written the wrong way, it can be used to shut your claim down. See, the VA doesn't go digging for answers. If something in your records is unclear, they don't ask for more details. They just mark it as incomplete. If your doctor didn't phrase the diagnosis in exactly the right terms, the system might not count it. If there's no direct connection made between your service and your condition, they assume it's unrelated, even if it clearly isn't. And that's the part no one warns you about. You could have back pain, hearing loss, PTSD, real documented issues. But if the medical notes don't connect the dots exactly the way the VA wants, it's like it never happened. Even worse, many military doctors, and even civilian ones, don't know how to write reports in the language the VA uses. so your records could be perfectly honest and still completely ineffective. I've seen veterans get denied because a note said back discomfort instead of chronic lumbar strain, or because a diagnosis didn't explicitly mention that it was service-connected, even though everyone knew it was. These aren't just technicalities. They're silent traps built into the system. And unless someone shows you what to look for, you won't even know it's happening. You'll just see that denial letter and wonder what went wrong, never realizing the answer was buried in your own file the entire time. This is why it's so important to have someone review your medical evidence before you submit it, not after the damage is done. Because the system won't fix these mistakes for you, and once your records work against you, winning your appeal becomes 10 times harder. Even when the VA agrees that your condition is real, they can still deny you compensation. Why? Because they say it's not severe enough. This is where a lot of veterans get blindsided. You finally get to the paperwork, the appointments, the evidence gathering, and then the VA comes back and tells you, yes, you're injured, but not to a degree that qualifies for meaningful benefits. And just like that, you're left stuck in a gray area where your pain is acknowledged but not taken seriously. The VA doesn't just approve or deny claims, they rate them. Everything is broken into percentages. 10%, 30%, 50%. Each level comes with different benefits, payouts, and thresholds. And here's the kicker. Even a 0% rating means they agree you have a service-connected condition. They're just telling you it's not bad enough to be worth compensation. Let that sink in. They're admitting the injury happened. They're admitting it's connected to your service, and still, you walk away with nothing. I've seen veterans rated at 0% for chronic migraines, knee injuries, even hearing loss. Conditions that impact their lives every single day. But because of how the VA measures severity, they end up with a label and no real support. And the process to increase your rating? That's a whole separate battle. You have to prove that your condition has worsened, that it interferes with work, sleep, daily activities. You basically have to relive your pain on paper just to get them to listen. This is one of the most disheartening parts of the VA system, because it makes veterans feel like their suffering doesn't count unless it reaches some invisible threshold. Like you're not hurt enough to matter. And the worst part is, the people making these judgments, they're reading numbers on a form. They don't see what your life is actually like. So if you've been told your condition isn't severe enough, don't let that be the end of the road. Ratings can change. New evidence can shift your case. But you have to keep pushing, because no one else is going to raise that number for you. Here's something most veterans don't find out until it's too late. Every single day you wait after filing costs you money. Not in theory. Not eventually. Literally. What most people don't realize is that your back pay, the money the VA owes you, starts on the day you file, not the day they approve your claim. So if you hesitate, if you delay submitting that paperwork, or if you give up and wait months before appealing a denial, you're leaving real money on the table. And depending on how long the process drags out, that could mean thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands, you'll never get back. The system is slow on purpose. It can take months, sometimes years, to get a decision. But during that entire time, every day counts toward your potential compensation. If your claim is eventually approved, they'll pay you back to the original filing date. But if you waited 6 months to file, that's 6 months of missed pay you'll never see. If you waited a year after your denial to appeal, that year disappears. It's a silent penalty, and no one warns you about it. There's no message that pops up saying, hey, the clock is ticking. They just quietly let the time pass, and then act like it was your choice to wait. I've heard stories from veterans who could have received thousands more if they had filed just a few weeks earlier. People who didn't know they could appeal right away, or didn't know their condition could be rated higher if they sent in new evidence immediately. All because the system keeps these timelines buried in fine print instead of explaining them in plain language. And here's the worst part. Even while you're waiting for their decision, whether it's fair or not, the VA doesn't pay interest on what they owe. So you sit in limbo, struggling, while your benefits collect dust on someone's desk. This is why acting fast matters. Not because you're desperate, but because the system is designed to punish delay. Filing today could literally mean a better life a year from now. But waiting is how they win. And how you lose one unpaid day at a time. One of the biggest mistakes veterans make is assuming that any help is good help, and that's where veteran service organizations, VSOs, come in. They're supposed to guide you through the process, help with paperwork, and fight on your behalf. And while some do exactly that, not all of them do it well. What most people don't realize is that not all VSOs are trained equally. Some have dedicated experts with years of experience, but others? They're volunteers juggling massive caseloads, undertrained, overworked, and rushing through forms just to get to the next person. You might think your claim is being handled by a professional, but in reality, someone with minimal training might be writing the most important application of your life. I've seen it happen too many times. A vet gets paired with a VSO who fills out the wrong forms, leaves out critical information, or doesn't ask the right questions. Then weeks go by, months, and finally, a denial arrives, and the vet has no idea what went wrong. They trusted someone to help, but that help wasn't good enough. The worst part? Most veterans don't realize they can switch. You're not locked into one representative forever. If your gut tells you something feels off, if your questions aren't being answered, if you're being rushed, if your paperwork seems sloppy, you're allowed to walk away and find someone better. There are accredited independent reps, attorneys, and advocacy groups who specialize in this process. But no one tells you that. They just say, call your local VSO. And that's it. You only get one chance to make a strong first impression with the VA. If your initial claim is weak, vague, or missing critical info, fixing it later becomes a lot harder. So while having someone in your corner is important, having the right person is everything. Don't settle for the first person who picks up the phone. Ask questions. Get second opinions. Your benefits are too important to leave in the hands of someone who isn't fully equipped to protect them. There's something most veterans don't realize until their claim gets denied, and by then, the damage is done. The VA doctors evaluating your condition don't work for you. They work for the system that's trying to save money. When you file a disability claim, you'll usually be sent to a compensation and pension exam, commonly called a CNP exam. This is supposed to be where a medical professional evaluates your condition and determines how serious it is. Sounds fair, right? But here's the problem. That doctor isn't your doctor. They're not there to advocate for you. They're there to report back to the VA. And what happens in that short exam can shape everything. I've heard countless veterans say the same thing. The appointment felt rushed. The doctor barely looked at them. They weren't asked the right questions, or were talked down to, or didn't even get a full exam. Some vets walk in thinking they'll be listened to and walk out feeling like they were brushed off. And that feeling, it's often right. These exams are a box the VA has to check, and sometimes they're more about limiting payouts than getting to the truth. Your pain, your history, your daily struggles. It can all be reduced to a few notes on a form. And those notes, they carry a lot of weight. Even if your personal doctor says one thing, the VA can lean on that CNP exam to justify a low rating or an outright denial. What they don't tell you is that you have options. You're allowed to submit an independent medical opinion from a doctor who actually listens to you, someone who takes the time to understand your condition and puts it in the kind of language the VA recognizes. These opinions can challenge the VA's version of the story, and sometimes they make the difference between a denied claim and a fully approved one. But the system isn't going to tell you that. They're hoping you'll just accept the results and move on. So here's what you need to remember. Just because someone wears a lab coat doesn't mean they're on your side. If your CNP exam fell off, if it didn't reflect your reality, don't stay silent. Get a second opinion, get documentation, and fight back with facts. Because no one else is going to correct the record for you. By the time most veterans reach this point, they feel like they've hit a wall. Their claim's been denied, the appeal window has closed, and it seems like the case is dead. But here's what almost no one tells you. Even after you've been denied, even after it feels like all options are gone, you can still reopen your claim. You just have to know how. The VA allows something called a reopen claim, but there's a catch. You can't just resubmit the same information. You have to bring new and material evidence to the table. That could be a new diagnosis, a medical opinion from a different doctor, updated service records, even personal statements from people who've seen how your condition has worsened over time. Most veterans don't know this exists. They assume that once they miss the appeal deadline, their file gets locked in a drawer forever. So they walk away, and they lose out not just on benefits, but on something even harder to get back: hope. But here's the truth. If you were denied before and you have anything new to show, anything that strengthens your case, connects the dots more clearly, or reflect a worsening condition, you can file to reopen. And the VA is legally required to review it. I've seen veterans go years thinking their case was over, only to bring it back to life with one updated piece of medical evidence, one letter from a specialist, one overlooked record that ties everything together. It doesn't erase the frustration or the lost time, but it gives them another shot. And in this system, that's everything. So if you've already been denied and you feel like the fight is over, take one more look. Dig through your records. Talk to your doctor. Ask yourself what's changed. Because if you have something new, the door isn't closed. You just need to knock a little harder. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't getting denied. It was realizing how much I didn't know, how much no one told me. The hidden rules, the silent deadlines, the small mistakes that cost you big. The truth is, the VA system isn't just complicated, it's overwhelming by design. And most veterans don't find it out until they're already buried in paperwork, frustration, and silence. But here's what I've learned. You're not powerless. The system wants you to give up, to take the first denial as the final word. But the veterans who win, the ones who eventually get the care, the support, the recognition they earned, they're not always the loudest. They're the ones who keep going, even when everything tells them to stop. If any part of this video hit home, if you've experienced even one of these moments, the denial, the confusion, the waiting, the silence, you're not alone. And you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. Take a moment right now. Leave a comment below and share which of these 7 truths you've experienced, or which one surprised you most. Your story matters, and someone else reading it might realize they're not alone either. And if you found this video helpful, please consider liking it, subscribing, and turning on the bell. It's a small action, but it helps us reach more veterans who desperately need to hear what no one else is saying. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about benefits. It's about dignity. It's about being seen. And it's about fighting for the support you earned, even if the system makes you fight harder than you ever should have had to. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.